Jack Tame was on a podcast called Recovering, which is run by the guy who's in this picture. I don't know his name because they didn't put it anywhere, and I don't remember people's names. I barely know them when they're standing in front of me. Has a chat to this man from he's kind of he acts in this podcast. He's kind of in he acts as the as a journalist's chaplaincy, or actually he might be a chaplain for journalists. So it's sort of like a place that people can go to usually it's connected to some sort of faith-based organization of sorts, or like there's some sort of religious connotations there, but not necessarily. But this is a podcast where he interviews the journalists and kind of does a check-in with them and see how things are going, and it's just a general kind of like chit-chat. And the reason I really wanted to watch this specifically with Jack is I haven't seen a lot of his stuff, or I haven't seen a lot of him being interviewed. But actually, there's a ton out there. I just wasn't looking for it, or it's more so not recently that that it's come up. But I wanted to, I'll say guiltily, I was really more so looking for an insight into his political leanings and how he sits politically. Because obviously if you're interviewing both sides and of the political spectrum as well as broadly the political spectrum, you probably do want to be fairly neutral, and you want to make sure you give everyone a fair chance and criticize where criticism is due, but not overly show favor to either side. So I was really curious to see if there's anything that kind of gave me a glimpse into how he leans politically. But it's just generally a good chat. I think if you're intuitive enough, you can kind of see where Jack lands politically. I don't think he's overly green lefty, and I don't think
he doesn't give me green lefty vibes.
He's not a green lefty. He's definitely probably not deep in the weeds, true blue, but he probably sits somewhere in centre left, centre progressive,
National and Labour,
centre leftish. I don't know how he votes, but I think we can get a general sense of his vibe from watching enough of his interviews. But yeah, he just says some really interesting stuff that I thought I would show you guys, because it's nice to learn a little bit about the people that we who are interviewing our politicians. So in this chat, he's talking about his time in America, previous to this wee bit I'm about to show you, his time in America covering the 2016 Hillary Trump election. And he gets asked about what his attitude is to doing the Q&A show, what his attitude is to interviewing people, and sort of his philosophy, and so I'll play a wee bit of this for you guys, and we can indulge in some smooth talk and Jack.
Between those two interviews, you've got Winston Peters in front of you, you've got Stan Grant in front of you. Two very different styles. What's going on?
Totally different styles. So when it comes to politicians, my attitude is that I am there not just to ask questions, but to seek answers. And in this modern era, again, politicians of all sides and perspectives are generally incredibly well trained at obfuscating and avoiding answering questions. And I just see it as my role, regardless of who the person is, to try and cut through that. And the thing is that most politicians are just super skillful in 3 or 4 minute interviews, which is the vast majority of their media, in obfuscating or talking around a subject or acknowledging a subject but actually shifting it immediately into something that they want to talk about. And so as one of the last real kind of political interview shows in the country, I just see it as my role on behalf of the viewer to try and cut through that. And I'm not saying I nail it and I'm perfect all the time, but that's what I endeavour to do. For someone like Stan Grant, I'm not holding him to account for anything. He's not a democratically elected representative of the people. He's had an amazing.
There's a guy over in Australia. I'm sorry, I don't know who he is. It was probably mentioned just beforehand, but a guy in Australia, I think. Maybe, I don't know.
Amazing life and an amazing career. He's an incredibly interesting person, and so I don't feel a compulsion to immediately say, no, hang on, that's not exactly what I asked, and here's the detail that I was looking for. Why aren't you bringing up this? But at the same time, they both come back to this kind of central principle in interviewing, which is that I all.
And then he talks about what do you think his technique is? What is his special? What do you think his special technique is when it comes to this?
Honestly, I haven't thought about it.
It's something really simple.
Get them to explain what they mean.
It's just listening.
Oh, yeah.
It's just listening.
Just let them
But
continue
also-
to go and go and go and.
I'll let him explain it, but yeah, basically, it's just listening.
Same time, they both come back to this kind of central principle in interviewing, which is that I always want to listen. And I mean, you will relate to this, but it's my experience that even though it seems like a super basic thing to do, an obvious thing to do, a lot of people, when they're interviewing live, are not very good at listening. Because if they're being broadcast to tens or hundreds of thousands.
Me. Except it's not tens of hundreds of thousands. It's just there's 300 of you and I
Yeah.
can't do
Oh, I
12
mean, we get up
Millions of
to a
people.
1,000 or so.
once or twice.
They're nervous, right? You're like, oh, what camera am I looking at? Where am I turning next? How long left in this interview? If you're on radio, the same thing. You know, you've got the text machine's going. You've got your producer speaking in your ear. There are lots of distractions and things. And actually, one of the hardest things you can do is really engage and listen to someone, to be as present as possible with what someone's saying. So in a political interview, that means listening to actually work out if they are answering the question you asked or if they're merely deflecting onto something they want to talk about. And for someone like Stan Grant, it's like just listen and let the man be interesting, because the man's incredibly interesting. And so it's such a privilege to be in a place where I do get to do both of those things. I think if I was just doing one, I'd be I'd get a bit frustrated. But how amazing to have a job where you can interview a finance minister and someone like Stan Grant in the same show, and with quite different styles.
Yeah, that was a fun little insight he's a real political junkie. I'm not sure if it's in these clips that I'm going to show you, but what was I going to say? Something related to what he just said. Yeah, don't know. Sorry, Magenta, you take over. it went, and then it went, and so.
No, I mean, it kind of makes sense, obviously, like, actually, because I have noticed a lot of the time, like, when you see it on, I guess, more like, say, breakfast news or those kind of other news shows, you can kind of tell that they don't do a lot of that. They don't often kind of be like, hey, actually, like, I asked you a whole different question. If anything, I actually find, especially with breakfast news, they have this weird, I don't know, it feels like they have this weird mandate where they always have to do just like weird, fun little quirky light things after, talking about serious stuff, which I think they're trying to do to like diffuse and like kind of take it from being so heavy, but it kind of just comes across as like disingenuous and kind of like they're just trying to be like, oh, and let's forget all about that, and here's what do you think about the Warriors, or whatever the fuck people say, is it up the wires, or I don't know. I don't do math and I don't do sport.
Yeah, it's I think it's such a Kiwi thing to do, though, isn't it? To be like, well, that was awkward. How do you think about rugby?
Yeah,
Like my
diminish.
my mum is the epitome of that. She when my friends were over from Japan, because we were all staying with them, because they live in a nice part of the country that we like to take tourists to. So we were staying with my parents, but we were having one of our friends is from Costa Rica, and we were having a discussion with him sort of around. I don't know. He's from Costa Rica, so you can imagine the sort of like circumstances that he grew up in, and the sort of things that he's the side of life that he's witnessed. Poverty and just sort of a completely different, to the likes of your Americas and Japans and New Zealands and Australias, that sort of thing. But we were having a discussion with him about, I think we went down cryptocurrency or something like that, and about building wealth and things, and the morality of owning crypto, and self-interest versus the greater good. And sort of my philosophy in the end was sometimes you kind of do have to be selfish in order to get yourself to a place where you can start to help others. It's sort of that oxygen mask mentality, within reason, obviously. I have to be a millionaire before I can possibly help anyone else, guys. I'm sorry. But my mum was in the room at the time, and she's like, Are you guys heading out anytime soon? I thought, just it's getting close to 12. You guys probably want to head off and go do stuff. And we're just having a discussion about stuff.
Yeah.
Like, it was just a genuine, like, back and forth, like, shooting the shit sort of types things. And it's about heavy topic-ish. We're talking about poverty and economics and,
the usual chat.
The usual chat that you have when you're in this fucked up world that we live in. But she was just like, just being in the room, she was just like, just enough of this. Go and enjoy your time. And we're just like, we're having an intellectual discussion. Let us have an intellectual discussion.
Yeah. And she's like, but I'm uncomfortable by it.
But I'm uncomfortable. You guys are discussing heavy topics and financials and things and economics, and I can't do it. So, yeah, she's very funny like that.
No, I get
Would
that.
you like me to play? Would you like me to play the next clip?
Let's go.
He was talking about thinking critically, and what he kind of tries to bring to the show, and trying not to get too deep in the tribalism, which I think he does a really good job of not letting his personal viewpoints slip. But this is him sort of discussing that.
Sets you up quite well for a very different role when it comes to Q&A and diving into Q&A. Can you see any connection there?
Yeah, and that's
He was talking about doing journalism for journalism's sake. So like doing the good work, which is journalism. So yeah, it's not a high paid job. There are better communications jobs you could do, but journalism has a public good.
perhaps why I chose this story, because I really strive to try and think critically about issues, and that's I see my job as kind of being a public conscience of sorts, which I know again sounds a bit grandiose, but also to try and to play devil's advocate, but to try and think critically about issues, because I think flowing on from 2016, and with the with everything that social media has done to our public discourse and political discourse, I think the impulse for tribalism is just so intense right now, and that is a phenomenon on all sides of the kind of political spectrum. And so I think for me personally, reflecting on 2016 and reflecting on how personally I was surprised at that result is a very valuable experience when I think about public policy ideas today, because I remind myself that no one has a monopoly on being right, and no one has a monopoly on good ideas, regardless of their kind of political background.
He was saying earlier before as well, when he was talking about covering the 2016 election, that he predicted that Donald Trump wouldn't win, as a lot of people did. But then, having worked in the States and kind of getting to know the sort of Midwest and getting to the mid country, and getting to know the issues that the people were facing, and how they were so pissed off and sick of the status quo when it comes to Democrats and Republicans and not doing enough. Then he started to understand why Donald Trump won. And yeah, that's what he's saying about not always being right.
And often that conventional wisdom's wrong. And actually, it doesn't matter if all of these people or institutions are saying one thing. It doesn't necessarily match the experience of someone who isn't represented as well. And so I think, that's why I think of that as being quite valuable for me, because I it's just a sort of humbling reminder to always try and go in and think as critically and independently and avoid whatever tribalistic urges you might have as possible. And I think.
Yeah. And I think he does a pretty good job. I think when it comes to Jake, he does a really good job of playing the devil's advocate role. I know a lot of people really don't like when people play devil's advocate. I personally, I like the devil's advocate mindset because I think it's really important to put yourself in someone else's shoes, and sort of it's a really easy way to put on their brain, even superficially, and say, okay, so how does the other side see this? How does the other side communicate this? Because it also gives us an opportunity when we hear and see and the things that we don't agree with, how we would respond to that and how we would combat that with our thoughts and mentalities of things. And that, I think it's really important to do every now and then, is to not just see something that that the other side have put forward, or like you're talking about tribalism there. I think it's really easy to see, like, it's easy for all of us to see something that Luxon or Willis or whatever has done and gone, you fuckwit. And our immediate response, I think all of us can say this, to some extent, our immediate response is always just like, you're a fuckwit, what are you doing? Because we know behind what all of these measures oftentimes are going to do, the lead-on effects, we know the nuances of it, and such. But sometimes I like to, instead of having that response, then sort of put the person who responds positively to that and then look at it critically from that point of view. I think it's important to do. I think it's important to put on someone's brain for 5 minutes and sort of see how they see it, and then also try and use that to help you communicate your view of it.
Oh,
that makes
absolutely.
sense?
No, yeah, I mean, like, I love me some devil's avocado. Always have. I mean, I think there are some times when you can kind of tell that devil's avocado isn't exactly needed in a conversation. But I think for me, it actually kind of reminds me of, I don't know if you know the story about how during World War II, how they kind of ended up analyzing planes to make them stronger in combat.
No.
Okay, well, usually I'm not a war nerd, but for once I get to step into Chewie's
What are
little
you,
shoe.
Chewie?
I know, right? But no. So what they did was they analyzed where the bullet holes were, and at first they were kind of like, okay, well maybe we need to strengthen those parts. But the thing is, these were the planes that got back. It was actually by kind of taking the parts in between and making them stronger that they were able to combat it. And I guess the analogy in my brain is kind of like, instead of how a lot of us just try to find the weaknesses in their argument, actually look at the strengths and how they get kind of, I guess, persuaded and that kind of thing. And just actually, I guess turning those types of mechanics back on them and speaking a language that they understand a bit more. Like, I'm not generally the kind of person that's the best at having those types of conversations, because we all know what I'm like. But I definitely think there are people who, and actually I would say that I have dabbled. I can dabble in trying to have a conversation that's more suited to the language of the right, but I also don't like doing that, and other people are better at it, so they can do it. Yeah.
So
I'm glad you guys like my diagram.
Yes, I highly recommend going and watching the full clip with Jack there on RNZ. But what I would even more so recommend, and because you'd be giving us some ad revenue, please and thank you, is that our Papa Pat, many years ago, it's about 6 years ago now, has done multiple conversations with Jack Tame.
Before he was
actually.
Papa.
before he was Papa Pat, he had many conversations with Jack Tame, and I could show so much of this, but I'm not going to. But it is one of our clips, so I can actually show you as much as I want to, really.
Yeah.
But there's so much in this. So this is an episode of the Department of Conversation, which is where Doc came from, Doc Studios. Sorry, Pat, I'm outing you here. This is episode 23, actually, of the podcast. And I think he's also episode 90 with Jack during lockdown, and then also episode 190 something. Pat's done a lot of these conversations. It's he if you watch the full thing, he actually explains it's attempt to do more of a Joe Rogan-y type thing. And he's done some really, really cool conversations if you want to have a listen to. But I'll play a wee bit of this for you, because it's some Jack from 6 years ago, I think it was. Yeah, 2019, just before lockdown.
Before it all got bad.
Well, before COVID all happened. It's May 2019, so a wee while ago, before COVID. But they're having discussion prior to this about how Labour governments and national governments do policy making and stuff like that, and how they manage the books. So I won't show you Pat, but I'll show you a little bit of Jack just to give you a taste of what's, I don't know which part of the conversation this is. So hopefully you get something interesting out of this for a wee bit.
Yeah, government debt and deficit to
this is
I agree.
because,
this is our tech man.
borrowing to build infrastructure that will save money.
Actually-
in the long run.
actually-
So, you know,
Jason makes a really good point. He's talking about how you shouldn't compare households to government debt to households' debts. Go on.
He did a really great breakdown about talking about how it's not, you can't totally, and he oversimplified obviously, but just, you know, talking about how the fact is that you can't compare government debt and deficit to household debt.
Yeah, I agree.
Because, you know, the government is borrowing to build infrastructure that will save money hugely in the long run. So, you know.
That's it. I mean, that would be I'm sure the criticism of people who want to sell assets is that you're going for a short-term sugar hit.
Sure, exactly.
And that often the cronies who are benefiting by buying up assets cheap are mates with the people who are selling them.
Absolutely. I mean, that happened the last time, because I still remember, and I mean, you Google this, Jason, you might not be able to find it, when they talked about selling like the 49% of a bunch of assets in New Zealand. This was the Labour government. The national government. They talked about they were going to use it to refit out hospitals. That was one of the things they were going to use the money for. And my question was, okay, so in 40 years from now, we don't have those assets anymore, and we want to refit out the hospitals again. What do we do then?
Google Graham Hart too. So I'm pretty sure didn't he buy Carter Harvey?
His cardboard $5 billion empire.
No, but
Graham Hart?
but it's amazing. I mean, he bought an asset really cheap from a I think it was from a national government, then sold it back to the Labour government for, you know, like a $20 million profit.
Well, that's like the New Zealand the train system as well,
the
wasn't
printing
it?
press or something. Yeah.
So this whole conversation honestly is fascinating. So someone was saying this was post breakfast. It was literally he just quit breakfast, and he was in his second week of doing Q&A.
Interesting.
And at the beginning of this, he also talks about being single and how journalism and radio and that sort of thing was not conducive to having relationships. So he's that was 6 years ago. So I'm pretty sure he recently went on paternity leave. So he's and he was 32 in this interview too. So he's aged a bit since then. And he's well and truly into his Q&A journey, his Q&A.
I just thought this was funny. It is kind of low-key giving Pat Rogan. I love it.
I highly recommend if you're a fan of Jack and you would like to know a little bit more about him and his journalistic, his what do you call it? His career.
Yeah.
If you want to be super creepy and parasocial like me, you should go and watch the 3 episodes of Pat and Jack Tame, and then go and watch the RNZ one.
Yeah, or if you
that's
just
cool.
want to see him in a t-shirt.